I didn't plan to go deep. It was just supposed to be a short hike. 3 hours max out and back. Same loop I'd done maybe a dozen times. The forest near my old hometown isn't wild. There are signs, maps, marked trails, even a little parking lot with trash cans and the same guy sitting in his truck most weekends. I parked around noon. No one else was there. It was the kind of October day that makes the woods look cleaner than they are. No insects, no fog, just sharp light through bare trees. I hiked slow. No music, no GPS, just the trail and a small paper map I never really used. Around an hour in, I stopped to eat. There's a stump I always sit on, wide, flat, smooth on top like it was cut for that purpose. I ate, drank water, took a breath, and stood to keep going. But when I looked up the path, something didn't sit right. The slope didn't match what I remembered. The turn ahead curved sharper, and the big dead tree with a split trunk, I couldn't see it. I chalked it up to memory. Forests change. Things fall, new things grow. I kept walking. But the longer I followed the trail, the less of it I recognized. There were still markings, paint on bark, broken branches. But they didn't feel right. Too fresh. Like they'd been placed recently, and not by rangers. After another half hour, the path started to narrow. No people. No birds. Just dry leaves underfoot and a wind that sounded like water rushing, though there wasn't any. I checked my phone. No bars. I tried to retrace my steps. But when I turned back, the trail looked different. It forked, and I didn't remember it doing that. Both directions looked equally worn, equally wrong. I picked left, thinking I'd recognize something eventually. But 10 minutes later I came across the same flat stump I'd eaten lunch on. Same half-bitten granola bar wrapper lying in the leaves. Same scuff on the bark where I'd sat. I wasn't where I thought I was. And now I wasn't sure I'd ever been. I didn't panic right away. I circled the stump, looked for any kind of marker I might have missed, a bend in the trail, a branch I should have turned at. Nothing. Just trees. Tall, quiet, standing too still. I pulled out my compass. Not because I trusted it, but because it was the only thing I had. The needle spun. Not in a circle. Not wildly. Just slow, lazy tilts. Like it couldn't make up its mind. I gave it a shake. Same thing. So I picked a direction. Not random, just forward. I figured if I kept moving, I'd hit a trailhead, or a river, or even just the road that borders the woods on the north side. An hour passed. Maybe more. I started sweating, then cooling off fast. The sun was dropping behind the trees. I hadn't seen the stump again. But that didn't comfort me, because nothing else looked familiar either, and the forest was getting quieter. I'd always thought silence was peaceful. Out here, it felt wrong, like something was holding its breath. Then I saw it, a red marking on a tree. It was paint, but not the right kind. Too fresh, too low to the ground. And it wasn't a trail marker. It was a circle. Just a crude, dripping red circle drawn fast. I looked around. Then another, farther ahead, on a trunk just out of reach. Same red. Same circle. No path. No indication of where to go. I stood there, trying to decide whether to follow them or walk the opposite way. But then I noticed the air. It was colder between those marked trees. Not just a little, enough to see my breath. Every instinct I had told me not to step through. But behind me, there was nothing. No signs, no light, just that pressure of the woods closing in. I took a step forward, then another. And as soon as I crossed between the painted trees, the sound came back. Not animals, not wind, just footsteps. Soft, behind me, matching mine, then stopping when I stopped. I turned around fast. Nothing. No movement. But I knew what I heard. Footsteps. Just one set. Too close behind me to be imagined. I stayed still for a long time, trying not to breathe too loud. The trees looked the same in every direction, pale, barkless in places, tight together like they'd been planted to trap something. I moved forward again, slower now, trying to step softer, hoping to catch the sound behind me again. Nothing. Then the trail opened up slightly, not a real path, just a stretch between two downed trees. That's when I saw it. The same red circle. Lower this time, drawn on a rock. And next to it, a scrap of fabric caught on a branch. It was gray, torn, maybe from a hoodie or jacket. It looked old. But it hadn't been there long. The edge was damp, the thread still curled like it had just been pulled. I looked at my own sleeves. Both intact. It wasn't mine. I left it. But something about the circle on the rock stuck with me. I started marking trees with my knife, just small notches, low near the base, every 10 paces. 30 minutes later I passed one. Not the kind I'd just made, but the exact same one I'd cut earlier. Same spot. Same angle. I ran my thumb across it. Still fresh. I had gone in a circle, and I hadn't turned around. I stood there staring at that notch, trying to remember each step, each bend, each slope. I'd gone forward. I was sure. But the forest didn't care. The light was starting to fade fast. The air was heavier. Even my breath felt like it belonged to someone else. I found a flat patch of ground and dropped my pack. I didn't want to sleep. But night was coming whether I liked it or not. I unrolled my mat and sat with my back to a tree, knife in hand. The woods weren't quiet anymore. They creaked, shifted. Something walked softly, but not away. It was always behind the next tree, always just out of sight. I didn't light a fire. I didn't want to be seen. The ground was cold. The bark at my back felt wet. I kept my eyes open as long as I could. The knife stayed in my hand, even when my grip started to cramp. I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember waking up. It was still dark, but something had changed. The air smelled burned. Not like a forest fire, more like metal and ash. I sat up. My pack was still there. My legs were stiff, cold. Then I noticed the ground around me. Disturbed. Like someone had walked in circles while I slept. Shuffled leaves. Fresh tracks. Too many. I stood slow, body tense. Then I saw the fire pit. I hadn't built one. But in front of me, maybe 10 feet, was a small circle of blackened stones. Ashes still warm. Something had burned here. I stepped closer. Inside the circle were scraps of paper. Melted plastic. One piece had writing on it. Faded, smeared. But I recognized it. It was part of the trail map I'd stuffed in my jacket pocket. I checked. It was gone. The edges of the burned map matched the tear in my coat. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't lit any fire. Someone had been near me while I slept, and they'd taken something personal. I put the knife back in my hand. Started walking again, faster than before. I didn't care what direction anymore. Just away from that fire. But as I walked, the trees didn't open up. They pressed closer. And the sky, it wasn't changing. The sun should have been up by now. But everything stayed dark gray. Not night. Not day. Just still. The woods were holding something back. I kept moving. Until I reached the next marker. Another red circle. But this one wasn't paint. It was made of something wrapped around the tree. Hair. I didn't touch it. The circle. Tied to the bark with what looked like human hair. It wasn't long, not thick, just enough to wrap once around and hold its shape. Like someone had done it quick. Like it wasn't meant to last. I stared at it longer than I should have. Something about the shape made my stomach clench. I turned away and kept walking. The air was sharper now. The silence had weight. Every footstep felt like I was being watched, not just seen, but measured. I stopped at a small clearing. Flat ground, familiar slope. And that's when I froze. My backpack was there. Not the one on my shoulders, the same one, placed in the center of the clearing. Zipped halfway open. Lying on its side like someone had dropped it gently. I walked up to it slow. The zipper had my fingerprint grease on it. I hadn't touched it since leaving the fire circle. Inside, all my things. In the exact order I packed them this morning. Same way I folded my jacket. Same brand of granola bars. Same knife in the side pocket. I took off the one I was wearing. Set it down next to the other. Identical. Down to the dirt smudges and the loop strap I always tie wrong. I opened both. Same contents. Two of everything. I felt my breath shorten. Either I'd lost time, or someone had copied me. Not just gear. My exact setup. Same snacks. Same knife, even worn the same way. This wasn't a trick of the woods anymore. This was someone watching. Someone repeating. I left both packs. Ran. Branches cut my arms, but I didn't stop. The woods weren't leading me anywhere. They were circling. And now they were circling me back to myself. I ran until my legs gave out. When I finally stopped, the trees had thinned just enough to let in light. But not sun. Just that same dull gray sky I'd been under all day. I bent over, hands on my knees, trying to breathe. No birds. No wind. Just the sound of my lungs and something else. Wood creaking. I looked up. There was a shelter. A-frame style. Small. Half covered in moss. I didn't build it. Didn't remember seeing it on any map. But it looked usable. Dry. Real. I stepped inside. No door. Just an open entry and a broken beam across the ceiling. Inside, the dirt floor was packed. Someone had been here. There were boot prints in the corner. Old maybe, but not mine. One pair pacing. Worn down into the earth like whoever made them had walked in circles for a long time. Then I saw something worse. Scratches. Not on the floor. On the inside of the walls. Short lines. Carved fast. Some grouped in fives like tally marks. Some overlapping, frantic. And one word, scratched deeper than the rest. Stay. Over and over. All caps. Pressed hard enough to splinter the wood. I backed out, heart racing again. I turned in a circle. The trees looked the same in every direction. But the clearing, it was new. I hadn't been here before. And still, something about the air felt used. Like I'd already breathed it. Like someone had just left. Or hadn't yet. I didn't stay. The shelter felt too small, like it would close in if I sat down. Like the walls would keep moving after I stopped. I headed east. At least I thought it was east. No compass anymore. No sun. Just gut instinct stretched thin. I walked for what felt like hours. The trees were more spaced out now, the ground flatter. Then I saw something. A jacket. Gray. Caught on a low branch. It looked exactly like mine. Same faded sleeve. Same logo on the chest. I didn't touch it. Not again. I walked wide around it. Didn't look back. But 20 minutes later, I saw it again. Same jacket. Same position. This time it was hanging a little higher, like someone had lifted it. I stopped. Turned in a slow circle. I couldn't see the path I came from. I couldn't see anything but trees in that same strange light. Then a sound. Like breath. Close. But not from my mouth. It was timed wrong. A slow inhale behind me. Then nothing. I turned, no one. But on the ground, a new print. Not a boot. Not mine. Bare. Wide heel. Long toes. Like someone had stepped out of their shoes and just walked up behind me. I kept going. Didn't run. Didn't stop. Eventually the trees broke. A field. Dry grass. Dead stalks. In the middle, a fire pit. Still smoking. One tent. Zipped. I didn't recognize the model. Didn't recognize the color. But I knew the gear outside it. My pack. My jacket. My knife stuck in the dirt beside it. And a trail of footprints. Leading away from the tent. Leading straight toward where I stood. I didn't go to the tent. I stood at the edge of the field, staring at it. The flap was closed. But something about the way it sat, like it had weight. Like someone was inside. I stepped back. Turned around. No more trees. No more trail. Just that field and the sound of smoke curling in windless air. I moved sideways along the edge, watching the tent from the corner of my eye. The prints in the grass, they were mine. My tread. My pacing. Like I'd already been here. Maybe hours ago. Maybe days. I walked until I found the other side of the clearing. A break in the tree line. The world beyond looked real. A slope. A familiar tree. A shape I hadn't seen in days, a fence. Metal. Rusted. But human. I ran. Didn't look back. And then I was through. Back on a trail. Back in the part of the forest I knew. An hour later I found the parking lot. My car was still there. Same scratches on the side. Same bag of trash I meant to throw out. Everything normal. Too normal. I drove home with the windows down. Let the cold hit my face. Tried to breathe out whatever had followed me. Tried not to check the rear view too much. Back at home I unpacked slowly. Every item exactly where I'd left it. No duplicates. No red circles. Just gear. But that night, something changed. The dream started. Not scary. Just off. Repeats. Same field. Same tent. Sometimes I'm outside it. Sometimes I'm inside. And sometimes I wake up. And the flap is open.